Hi, 6th grade. For you, it is March 24th and it's Tuesday. And welcome to our intro video specifically about reading and writing. Today's the day we're going to start our new book, The Hawk That Dare Not Hunt by Day. And while normally this would usually fall a little later in the year and it would overlap with our curriculum and our history study of the Reformation, we're going to start it early because we can't be doing play practices with everyone at their own individual homes. And that's what we'd be normally doing in school right now. But we got to get our reading literature time in. So this is actually a book that is a crossover between our history and literature curriculum. It's about William Tyndale and the time of the Reformation. I'm going to read a little background for you. You also have this document in RenWeb, so if you need to pause the video and go into RenWeb, go to your classroom, the homeroom, and then this will be under resources. Unfortunately, since we haven't studied Tyndale history yet, there's some heavy spoilers for this historical fiction book, but I'm going to read the document that's an intro document to William Tyndale introduction. Should look like this. Spoilers, sorry for the book, but it's not spoilers for history, it really happened. Translator William Tyndale, strangled and burned. And you can read along with me as I read aloud and annotate for important details. So again, pause the video if you need to go and print out that document. It's the introduction about William Tyndale. And the headline, when you open the document, is Translator William Tyndale, strangled and burned. How many Bibles do you have in your house? For most of us, Bibles are easily accessible, and many of us have several. That we have the Bible in English owes much to William Tyndale, sometimes called the father of the English Bible. 90% of the King James Version of the Bible and 75% of the Revised Standard Version are from the translation of the Bible into English made by William Tyndale. Yet, Tyndale himself was burned at the stake for his work on October 6, 1536. Back in the 14th century, John Wycliffe was the first to make, or at least oversee, an English translation of the Bible. But that was before the invention of the printing press, and all copies had to be handwritten. Besides, the church had banned the unauthorized translation of the Bible into English in 1408. Over 100 years later, however, William Tyndale had a burning desire to make the Bible available to even the common people in England. After studying at Oxford and Cambridge, he joined the household of Sir John Walsh at Little Sudbury Manor as tutor to the Walsh children. Walsh was a generous lord of the manor and often entertained the local clergy at his table. Tyndale often added spice to the table conversation as he was confronted with the biblical ignorance of the priests. At one point, Tyndale told a priest, "If God spare my life ere many years pass, I will cause a boy that driveth the plough shall know more of the scriptures than thou doest." It was a nice dream, but how was Tyndale to accomplish this when translating the Bible into English was illegal? He went to London to ask Bishop Tunstall if he could be authorized to make an English translation of the Bible, but the bishop would not grant his approval. However, Tyndale would not let the disapproval of men stop him from carrying out what seemed so obviously God's will. With encouragement and support of some British merchants, he decided to go to Europe to complete his translation, then have it printed and smuggled back into England. In 1524, Tyndale sailed for Germany. In Hamburg, he worked on the New Testament, and in Cologne, he found a printer who would print the work. However, news of Tyndale's activity came to an opponent of the Reformation who had the press raided. Tyndale himself managed to escape with the pages already printed and made his way to the German city of Worms, where New Testament was soon published. 6,000 copies were printed and smuggled into England. The bishops did everything they could Clearing my throat. The bishops did everything they could to eradicate the Bibles. Bishop Tunstall had copies ceremoniously burned at St. Paul's. The Archbishop of Canterbury bought up copies to destroy them. Tyndale used the money to print improved editions. King Henry VIII, then in the throes of his divorce with Queen Catherine, offered Tyndale a safe passage to England to serve as his writer and scholar. Tyndale refused, saying he would not return until the Bible could be legally translated into English. Tyndale continued hiding among the merchants in Antwerp and began translating the Old Testament while the king's agents searched all over England and Europe for him. Tyndale was finally found by an Englishman who pretended to be his friend, but then turned him over to the authorities. After a year and a half in prison, Tyndale was brought to trial for heresy, for believing, among other things, in the forgiveness of sins and the mercy offered in the gospel was enough for salvation. In August 1536, he was condemned, and on October 6, 1536, he was strangled and his body burned at the stake. His last prayer was, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." The prayer was answered in part when 3 years later, in 1539, Henry VIII required every parish church in England to make a copy of the English Bible available to its parishioners. So there's a little bit of an introduction about William Tyndale and his life and important acts. Let's talk a little bit about the hawk that dare not hunt by day. This book is considered historical fiction. So take a few seconds to yourself to think about the name historical fiction. Think about what that might mean. Maybe any other historical fiction works you've read. Well, the name kind of speaks for itself. Historical fiction presents readers with a story that takes place during a notable period in history, and usually during a specific, significant time period or event within that bigger period. Historical fiction works often present actual events from the point of view of fictional people living during that time period. Because it's fiction, there's an artistic license that's allowed in the subject matter, the presentation, the lives of the fictional characters, as long as it doesn't deviate significantly from the established historical timeline. In this book, the author, Scott Odell, accurately portrays the historical events in the life of William Tyndale while using fictional characters to convey the political and religious upheavals in the 16th century. Just as a reminder, the 16th century is the 1500s. There are a couple of different points of view historical fiction can take. We can have third person, an all-knowing author, but this one in particular is first person. It's almost like a diary or someone telling a story from their point of view. Now, once you meet the main character who's telling the story from his point of view, he is fictional. So the events that he is witnessing are something that take place in the course of the actual historical timeline, but the main character himself is created by the author to kind of take us through this period of history. Just a few more reminders about this book. If it's in the life of William Tyndale, you know that the setting is in the 1500s. Obviously, we haven't gotten there in history yet, but Martin Luther has sparked the Reformation. His writings are being read all over Europe. Henry VIII at the time was considered the defender of the Catholic faith. Eventually, he's going to break off and form his own church, but right now, Henry VIII is a defender of the faith. He wrote a paper refuting Martin Luther. And then we have a lot of other little historical tidbits we'll dive into as we read the book, but I think that's a pretty solid intro for now. What we're going to do is we're going to read one book a week. This book is broken up into 5 books. So for example, if you open up your book, you'll see Book 1. Book 1. Book 1 includes chapters 1 through 10. So a lot of these chapters are only 2 to 4 pages long. They're small snippets from a first person point of view. So we're going to get started on that this week. If you have been unable to pick up this book from the office, I have chapters 1 through 5 uploaded under the homeroom of your class and under resources. So you should be able to download that document until you can get your hands on this book. If you are still unable to get into the office, please let me know and I may be able to upload some more pages for you. But for right now, chapters 1 through 5 are the only ones uploaded. This is your book to keep. Write your name on the inside. Annotate for content. We're reading this more from the historical perspective than the literary perspective, but you'll also find things like a helpful vocab sheet uploaded on RenWeb just for your personal knowledge and betterment. All right, that's it for reading today. So start reading Book 1. Book 1 should be finished, all 10 chapters, by the end of this week on Friday, so that will be due. But let's briefly go into wrapping up your current writing assignment. We are going to have you finish your quote-unquote imaginary essay about Midsummer Night's Dream. You should already have your 5-sentence intro paragraph with your thesis and then your 3 topic sentences. That would be what the imaginary paragraphs would argue about. Today, I would like you to write your conclusion. Think of this as a creative way to restate your thesis and your 3 main topic sentence points. But we don't want to just regurgitate the same sentences formatted in the same way with the same words. Think of another way to pick new words, new details to focus on. So you want to reemphasize your thesis and your topic sentences in a 5-sentence minimum conclusion paragraph. So once this writing project's over, basically what you'll have is a complete intro, those 3 topic sentences that represent your paragraphs that are imaginary, and a complete conclusion. So you can go ahead and finish up writing today. No grammar for today since we have that longer paragraph writing assignment, and I will be inserting into RenWeb your math practice test. So there's not going to be a new math video today either. This video is longer because I'm tying everything up in one video. But we will have a live Zoom today at 12 noon to go over any questions you may have on your math practice test. Try to take that practice test in a test environment, no distractions, don't look at any of your notes or previous work. Time yourself for about 50 minutes. That way you can come to the Zoom today or ask me individual questions on your practice test before your actual math test, which is tomorrow, Wednesday the 25th. All right, thank you for listening and watching this longer video today as we go through a few different things and do our intro to our new book. But I hope you have a happy Tuesday.